The key is that engineers design really well for the design bases. You tell them that an earthquake will be a 7, they'll build a plant to withstand a 7. The problem is that Mother Nature doesn't believe in design bases. And sooner or later, you get an 8 or a 9 or a 65-foot tsunami or a dam breaking, and the engineers didn't design for it, and the building fails.
Well, then again, of course, Arnie, I think actually this is a quote from you, which is never use the word sandbags and nuclear power in the same sentence. You know, you know, totally not talked about in the press were the 2 plants on the Mississippi River. Gosh, they're next to water again, you know, like Fukushima, that were undergoing flooding at the same time Fukushima was in the news. And you saw pictures of the nuclear power plant inside a little dam, almost looking like it's floating in the river while the river had come up around it. It's like anywhere you put a nuclear power plant, it's pretty close to the water level of where it is. They don't pump the water uphill very far. You know, the plant is right there next to the, you know, next to the water source. So you got places like the one in the Philippines where there's a nuclear power plant at the foot of a volcano on an earthquake fault with a V-shaped valley that would focus a 20-foot tsunami to become 80 feet by the time it reached the plant. It's like, who approved that one, you know? But the whole point is we don't have to do these things. Yeah. We have sources of energy right now that are very practical and can replace electricity totally economically, especially in other parts of the world that don't have big centralized power stations. You know, in the United States, we have big hydro plants, we've got coal burning, we've got big natural gas plants, and we've got these nuclear power plants that feed a grid. Well, we have about 300 million people, so that kind of makes sense. But then you look at Ethiopia. It has 120 million people, about, you know, close to a third of the United States, or a little more. No grid, no roads to 60% of the villages, and they need electricity. It's all generators. You know, so how do you fix it for the rest of the world? Well, you have to replace the fossil fuel that those generators are running on with something that's clean, and that would be alcohol fuel, which is based on solar energy. We look at around the world people doing electrical generation with fossil fuels, and we are not associated very well with that in the United States. That most of the world isn't talking about pollution from nuclear waste or nuclear fuel. They're talking about real, honest-to-God air pollution from burning fossil fuels for electricity. So we have many levels of replacing electricity we need to go to, but nuclear power plant is, you know, basically a Rube Goldberg idea that only could get sold in an industrialized country where they have people selling the machinery to go into them. Other places can't even consider nuclear, and I guess that's to their benefit. But when you take a look at the air pollution problems in other countries, it's enormous. And nuclear power, you know, I mean, although we have all electric homes in the US, which are nuclear powered, in most of the world, half the people in the world cook over wood or charcoal or kerosene inside their house with 3 rocks in a pot. So half the world has no use for nuclear power, even for cooking. And those people are dying from inhalation of fossil fuel or wood smoke. Those people could be using alcohol, which is practically pollution-free and safe to use indoors. So, you know, you start looking at the nuclear thing in the whole world context, and you go, well, it doesn't apply to most of the people in the world. Why are we doing it anywhere? Well, the answer is because we can, because the engineers said we could build this cool thing, but, you know, we really can't. You know, when you start boiling water in any kind of boiler, things wear out, you know, and if they wear out in a nuclear power plant, it's really bad. It's like the difference between a car accident and your engine wearing out and being in a plane and the engine running out. You know, there's a big difference between something wearing out, and nuclear power is way too risky.
Arnie, I know on your site you've got a lot of really important clips, experiments that you've run, Fairwinds Associates, and our viewers can see that on the screen here and be checking you. I heard that you have been asked to participate in the Japan Environmental Film Festival, or that you guys are presenting a program there, and to me it sounded like you were presenting a message of hope. It's kind of like echoing what Dave was saying right here. What is that about, the film festival about?
Well, on Friday, that's the 1st of July, we were asked to go over and be the keynote speaker at the Tokyo Peace Film Festival. I couldn't do that. It didn't make sense to fly all that time for 15 minutes.
Aren't you anxious to get to Japan?
Actually, I will be going back at the end of August, it looks like.
Wow.
But anyway, so we put together a video which will be up on our site on Friday as well. And you're right, there is a message of hope here. The Japanese can go back to nuclear power, and there's a huge protest movement within Japan right now. They gathered 7 million signatures to stop firing up these nuclear plants. And just last Friday, there was 45,000 people surrounded the Prime Minister's house trying to prevent the startup of these nuclear plants. So they have an opportunity here. And it's not going to be easy. You can't claim that, starting tomorrow, if you put your solar collector up, everything's going to go away. But they can start a different process, down a different path, with solar or wind or alcohol-based fuels and a smart grid. And the difference between this century and last century is that we can move power on grids now that we couldn't do back in the 1960s or 1970s when all our nuclear plants were built. With computers, we can shift the load to where the power's needed. And you can distribute the generation all over a country. And I've been telling the Japanese now for a long time that there's a business opportunity here. If they figure it out for Japan, they can sell it to the rest of the world. The Germans get that message. The Germans are walking away from nuclear within 10 years. And the reason is they've figured out they can make more money selling windmills, selling solar, selling the smart grid, selling anything but nuclear. So that if there's money to be made, and I believe there is, distributed generation of power is the 21st century way of making power. And that was the message we tried to give in the video that's going up on Friday to the Tokyo Film Festival.
Wow, that's really powerful, and it's interesting that the people of Japan, how can you have that much of a population not have say in what's happening to them? I mean, it's just incredible.
There are a lot of industrialized countries give way too much power to economic interest to decide political policy, and that's a fundamental problem of the degradation of democracy. And you get that when there are huge concentrations of money and corruption. Look at the way the government runs in Nigeria. It wouldn't be such a kleptocracy, if it wasn't for oil there. If there wasn't this concentrated wealth that a small number of people had an interest in. So, the people who have an interest in oil or coal or nuclear are small but powerful. And the population has this annoying benefit and advantage, but it's not as powerful as money. They have the truth, like nuclear power is dangerous. That's the truth. Solar power done properly is cheaper than nuclear. That's the truth. But to break through, for instance, subsidies, other kinds of opposition that's regulatory, refusing to upgrade, as Arnie said, to a smart grid that can take energy from many small sources. Those are things that have to be fought at the policy level, and corporations, in conjunction with some governments, have a lot of say in that versus the public.
Yeah, I know you're not, you don't consider yourself an advocate, Arnie, that you're an expert witness and you're a nuclear engineer, and I think this reflects what Dave's just saying is that the truth is what we have, and it's really great that you're presenting the truth, because you don't have to advocate. All you have to do is present the truth and let people kind of think this thing through, because if you don't have the data, and very few people do, I'm so grateful that your site's there and you and Maggie are working really hard to get this information, like Dave working, you can go to the IIEA site, Dave's website.
Is alcoholcanbeagas.com, and we have a lot of discussion of alternative ways of making electricity, refrigeration, cooking,